Indeed, Islamic tradition on the conduct of war effectively converges with the Western just war tradition, in that both cultures are able to accept the legal constraints imposed on the conduct of war in international law. Jihad is war within limits that trace ultimately to the prophet of God. Just cause, right intention, competent authority, a reasonable hope of success, the aim of peace, all these criteria of the Western just war tradition are present formally in the rules governing jihad, as is the jus in bello condition for discrimination in targeting. What has upset all this, of course, is the Wahhabi tradition. Wahhabi Muhammad ibn al-Wahhab died in 1792, quite a long time ago, but he led a movement in Central Arabia against the Ottoman Empire to create what he thought as nearly as possible the conditions Muhammad had. And these ideas were revived in Saudi Arabia and still are, and very strongly propagated by various Saudi funds and policies for export throughout the Muslim world. So this is what we're seeing now coming through in these terrorist attacks. The ideology emphasised a literal interpretation of the Quran and the Sunnah, that is the example of the Prophet, which are quite normative in Muslim tradition. And the Wahhabi enthusiasts denounced other Muslims that they judged fell short of their ideals. So they called for a militant jihad to establish a true Islamic state based on a literal interpretation of the Sharia. And these ideas had a major influence on later activists in India, Maulana Maududi and Sayyid Qutb in Egypt with the Muslim Brotherhood. So what was new about this was he interpreted jihad to mean the defence of Islam could mean armed struggle, but an armed struggle conceived in terms of the forces of good against evil as a demonic quasi-Manichaean struggle between light and darkness. So Qutb, you often see his name in the papers now, saw the world in terms of these polarities and drew on this the realm of Islam, the realm of non-Islam or paganism, and like the Kharijites, who were the assassins of the 7th century AD, he taught that Muslims who refused to participate in his version of the renewal of Islam could be killed. And he denounced Muslim governments and Western secular elites as atheists against whom all believers must wage holy war. And as John Kelsey writes, this call to strike civilians, he says, "Let there be no mistake about this. Islam is very clear on the matter. The Prophet said, 'Do not cheat or commit treachery, do not mutilate or kill women, children or old men.'" But Bin Laden, for instance, has used these things as well. So we face a terrible problem if, in the perception of the Western world, they think this is genuine Islam. It's not, it's a perversion of Islam. Why is it happening? Because of the grievances the Muslim world is feeling against the West. And the humiliation they see their countries occupied and colonised by Western forces, shame at the failure to maintain the prestige of their cultures, which are great civilizations, and to see to experience what is happening in some of the Muslim countries in the Middle East is hurtful for them. Failure to keep pace with the technological social change in the West, failure to have stable governments, disillusionment with earlier efforts to reform and modernise, with the nationalist movements, Nasser in Egypt, with socialism, various forms of countries have used socialism, with communism in Afghanistan, and more recently capitalism. Anger at the fate of the Palestinians and continued uncritical support of the West for Israel. Resentment at intrusion by Western powers in Iraq, invasion of Iraq, Afghanistan. The violation of traditional cultural norms in dress, in the media, in music, the materialism, the consumerism. Understandable. And behind all this, the loss of national cultural identity with all the historic change in the culture and the different social media. Why do they have such appeal? Because for many people who are disillusioned with and adrift, they invoke the glorious past of Islam as the spiritual core of great civilizations. They want a purified Islam, but they think it requires a literal interpretation of the Quran. It gives people a new sense of purpose. If you're on a jihad like this, it fills you with a new sense of purpose. You have a mission in life, a sacred mission. And that changes how you feel about yourself and your role in the world. So it's very interesting that some of the key people we see performing these terrorist acts recently are people who have had very disturbed personal histories.